Hello everyone, this is Alex, and today I would like to present to you a retro review of Endless Legend. Endless Legend was released by Amplitude Studios back in 2014. Now, Endless Legend, to me, is a fairly unique 4X turn-based strategy game. And it brings a lot of new ideas and new concepts to the table of 4X turn-based strategy games. And really does set it apart from, say, the Civilization style of games that many of us have grown up and loved over the years. One of the key things that Endless Legend really brings to the table is its unique faction system, which we'll discuss here in just a moment. But starting off with, we have the main title screen here. You get your normal options. There is a community of mods, people who create mods that can attach to Endless Legend to really change the experience. And as I mentioned, there's a pretty decent sized community. I don't know if they're doing more mods at this point though in 2026. I think most of those are done, but there's quite a bit out there to kind of really create some unique experiences with the game. But the game itself does bring a lot of unique experiences on its own. So you get a lot, whether you get the game or you also start bringing in mods. Now, some of the key mods that have been really recommended have been gameplay and difficulty changes, more improvements towards the AI system and the balancing. A lot of them have been balancing mods, some of which have actually been picked up by Amplitude Studios and incorporated. So that says something about the community that Amplitude Studios have really been building up over the years, particularly with Endless Legend and Endless Space 2. There's some very smart people in that community that bring their own items to the games that really improve them. Now, we're not talking Skyrim level of community modifications, but it's there. Now, I mentioned the factions, and if I start a new game here, you'll see exactly what I mean. So here you get the standard layout for creating worlds, world sizes, continents, difficulty options, the amount of turns a game will take. So a normal game will be 300 turns, and that's seen in game speed. So if you go to game speed, it's 300 turns. Endless is 600. Slow, you come in at 450. If you do a fast game, you'll get 150 turns, and that will go through fairly quick. I haven't done the fast game myself. I like to go at a pretty even pace, but what I found personally is that 300 turns really does give a good sized game. At some point, I'll have to try Endless and slow speed and see what it's like. But for me, normal is pretty good. It hits a sweet spot for me. Now, let's talk about the factions. Now, this is the key thing that Endless Legend does extremely well and sets it apart, as I mentioned, from other 4X turn-based strategy games. We see the same thing with Endless Legend. So, each faction is very thematic. It's not like a reskin or a certain flavor like we see with Civilization. Here, not only are the factions very unique in their story, their art, their units, but also particularly in their gameplay. Not only in the fact that some factions have particular bonuses, but they can also have particular restrictions that channel that faction towards a certain style of gameplay that is unique to them and where their story and the unit composition aligns with. Okay. So, for example, you have factions that can never declare peace, like the Necrophages. They are a faction that is always at war. They are pestilent plague on the planet of Riga, and they're out there to conquer and exterminate. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And their units reflect this. They have a unit that can actually create additional units from the bodies of their enemies, which is the Perleator. So it's a faction that will kill enemy armies and grow from that, and that the faction also feeds off those armies. As the corpses pile up, that's actually a food source for the necrophages. Absolutely lovely faction. On the other side of that spectrum, you have the roving clans. Roving clans is now a faction that can never declare war. These are traders. They're in it for the money. They're in it for profits and an economic victory. But they have a lot of tricks in their bag. They can play pretty underhandedly. They can shut other factions and empires out of the market. They can hire privateers and kind of make raiding armies and raiders that are not aligned to anybody. They just happen to show up on people's doorstep, and they don't know the reason why, but typically the roving clans have something to do with that. Also, their units themselves, while they cannot declare war, they're pretty good. And they're more on the defensive side. Now, some of the other factions are more flexible than others. So for a new player coming in, there are factions that I would say are more versatile and others that are specialized. I wouldn't say easier or harder. Yeah. So for example, the Wild Walkers is a very unique faction, but it's probably also the best one for beginners because they get a straight up industry bonus from forests because they are elves and they can make the best use of forests on the planet. But they don't operate under restrictions like the necrophages or the roving clans. Another one that I would recommend for beginners are the Vultures. They're more defensive oriented. And they are very good at being a turtling faction. They have a lot of bonuses towards defense of their cities, and they have the unique capability of instantly transporting units from one city to another using a strategic resource, which you designate what that resource is. So a vulture city that looks like it's undefended can very quickly become defended when they teleport their units in. And then you have another faction like the Draken that have good, powerful units, but they are very good in diplomacy. And they can actually force factions into peace, basically. So a forced peace can mean the Draken can literally pick and choose what wars they fight and what wars they don't want to fight, which is a pretty powerful ability. But their main victory type is diplomatic. But they're not locked into diplomatic, just as like Vultures are not locked into science and Windwalkers are not locked into a wonder victory. They can do almost any other type of victory. While the necrophages are locked out of diplomatic victories. Yep. Because they cannot form alliances. The best they can get to is a Cold War. And that's it. You also have some vertical factions where they have one main city and they have various means to go out and increase their territory, but not in a traditional way. Namely the Cultists, which is one faction, and the Makara, which is another faction. And they have very unique gameplay mechanics on expansion. Yeah. Now, in the base game, these top 5 factions you will not receive. These are from the DLC. The Forgotten, the Lai, the Magwar, the Kapaku, and the Makara. What you do get from the base game are the Windwalkers, Broken Lords, Vultures, Mazari, Necrophages, Ardent Mages, Roving Clans, Draken, and Cultists. Even these base ones here give you a lot to play with. There's a lot of meat on the bone here. But for the DLC, each one of these additional factions that are brought in typically are aligned to a new gameplay mechanic that was brought in by the DLC. So for example, the first DLC, Shadows, brought in espionage and spying to the game for all the factions in the game. But they made a particular faction, the Forgotten, that really lean into that new gameplay mechanic. Hence the Forgotten. This is a faction from the Vultures, a split-off faction. And with this faction, they're not able to generate science on their own. They have to steal science tech from the other factions. A very interesting faction to play with. Then, next up, you have the Shifters DLC, and this brings in the Alai and brings a lot of improvements to the winter mechanic in Endless Legend. Now, the winter mechanic is something we'll show here in a little bit, but in Auriga, there are seasons. There's kind of a spring-summer season, and then there's a winter season. And in the winter season, the snows come down, and everything really slows down. Food production really comes down. Your sight vision comes down. Your travel capability really goes down until you get out of winter. And in this DLC, a lot of improvements were made to winter. I would say overall, the Sifters DLC is the best DLC out of all the available DLC in regards to improving the game, because they brought the Pearl system, which is only available during the winter. There are unique buildings available that can be built in the winter, and you have the Temple of Auriga, which uses these new pearls, which can be gathered during the wintertime, to even change the effects of winter or build unique capabilities only available in the winter. And I think this was one of the best improvements they made, they being Amplitude Studios. So if I was to get the base game and only had one DLC to get, I would get this one, the Sifters DLC. Next one, we have the Margwar. Now, this faction and its accompanying DLC really focused on the naval aspect of the game. Again, another big improvement. Here, the open oceans are no longer just something to cross. Now they're active fields of their own. There are sunken laboratories, there are trade lanes on the open ocean, and here with this faction, it is, as you can see, a very nautical faction. A very interesting faction. They're kind of Lovecraftian in nature. They have a lot of capabilities of mental and mind control, of focusing on the water. Almost all their units are based on the water, namely the Vor and the Leviathan. So two of the three main units are water-based by themselves, and then you have the Mastermind, which can mind control neutral units. I've not dug into this particular faction, but I would like to fairly soon. Maybe my next game I play here. This is a very unique faction and a lot of fun. Next up, we have the Kapaku that came in with the Infernal faction. The Kapaku is an interesting one in that they're a faction that originally came from a planet that was volcanic, and that was their paradise. And now they've been brought to this green, lush world of Auriga by the Endless. And when they see verdant trees, beautiful grass in the world, they see the 7th level of hell. These guys, as adorable as they are, they want to be in volcanoes, and they actually will actively terraform the land into a volcanic, almost hellish landscape, because that is the native landscape that they come from. Very interesting faction. They actually build their own army out of clay and golems, and they have the capability, again, as I mentioned, to terraform their entire region, and they benefit from that terraforming. And they have unique technologies that use lava and magma and things like that. That is unique to the Kapaku. A very interesting one. Last up, we have the Mycara with the Symbiosis expansion. Now, this was the last expansion that was released for Endless Legend. I think a number of Endless Legend players may have skipped over this, because by the time this expansion was released, Endless Space 2 was out, and everyone was excited about that game, and it's a fantastic game on its own. So this one may have kind of not gotten the attention that it would normally have gotten. But the Mycara is a very interesting faction. I did play and win the game with the Mycara. They are a vertical faction similar to the Cultists, but rather than using neutral and minor factions to expand, they grow these tendrils out into the world, and they use food as kind of a construction resource. And they are a very neat faction to play with. Now, the unique gameplay mechanic that Symbiosis brought in are the Urkons. These are these titanic beasts that come from Auriga. They erupt from the ground of Auriga. There are 3 of them, and they have big effects in the overall world. They can actually change the characteristics of regions, and if you can take control of one, you can gain a big advantage for your faction. Okay, so this is what I mean by the fact that all the factions are very unique, and they could bring in unique gameplay that are exclusive to the other factions. So if you play from one faction to another, you're going to get completely different gameplay experience. So if you play the Necrophages in one game, and you play it and you win it, that's one gameplay experience. But you're going to get a very different gameplay experience if you play with the Forgotten next. And that's what really gives Endless Legend its longevity, in my opinion, is that each faction gives you a very different experience of the game. While in many other games, if you change the faction, you're getting the same gameplay experience, but you're just changing the coat of paint that you're looking at. That's not the case here. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of this. And we're going to take a look at some of the games that I played from quite a while ago. Now, I have just recently completed a campaign with the Art of Mages, and I've uploaded that entire campaign on my YouTube channel. It was from start to finish, and I did win with that campaign. I won with a science victory. And having just completed that campaign, I thought, now would be a good time to do a proper retro review of Endless Legends. So, I have a couple of different factions that I've played with over the years, some 2024s, just recently. I just did the Art of Mages, so I won't bring them back up again. But let's just say I pull in the Alai, for example. Okay, now this is the Alai. This is a very early game situation where we're only on turn 19 and we're starting out here. Now, I'm just going to go through the aspects of the game rather than playing the game and showing you what that entails, because that would take forever. But here we have the overall map. Now, this is my main region here, and I already have one faction that's coming up to my north, and that faction, thankfully, is the Vaulters, who are more defensive than offensive. If it was the Necrophages, this would be a little bit more concerned about my neighbors. But right now, that's not terrible. Now, the thing about the Alai is that while they are not a vertical faction like the Cultists or the Makara, they don't like to expand that much, so they have a penalty to their expansion disapproval. And so in Endless Legend, you have this empire approval value. Okay? So, when your faction expands in the game, you add more and more cities. There's actually a disapproval by the population. I think some just feels we're expanding too much or it's affecting their region, but it does impose a cost to endless expansion. So you can't go nuts and just say, okay, I'm going to start a new city everywhere. Or what you'll find yourself in is a situation where you have very low approval ratings, and when your approval drops sufficiently low enough, it will impact your food production, your industrial production. Then if it gets even lower, that impact becomes much larger. I think it comes on like 50%. You only get half of the food and industrial production that you would normally get. And if it goes even lower and lower to the very bottom, then you run the risk of rebellion. Now, there's something important to take a look at, and that is this. Up here at the top, you have what is called the FIDSI system, F-I-D-S-I. And what that means is that it's an acronym for Food, Industry, Dust, Science, and Influence. These are the 5 main resources in the game. And this is not just in the game in Endless Legend. This is also true in Endless Legend 2, Endless Space 2, and Humankind. Yeah. All those games use the FIDSI system. Again, Endless Legend 2 is coming up. There's a sequel announced. Should be out in a full release this year in 2026. But again, in the Endless Space universe, the FIDSI system is a common thread that runs through all of them. Yeah, and humankind is also part of that system. So right now, with my one city, I have all my population in industry. And by doing that, I'm able to build buildings much faster. If I move them over to food production, now my population increases at a much faster rate, which gives me one more population, which is these little icons here, that grows the city. Yeah. If I move them over to science, again, increases the science production rate in that city, which allows me to research technologies that much faster. Dust, which is this type of gold in the endless space universe that has many, many uses, but here is a kind of a replacement for money. Basically, the amount of dust generation goes up, which gives me more reserves to buy units, or in some cases, in other factions like the Ardent Mages, fuels their magic. Or in the case of the Broken Lords, allows them to create more population because it's a population almost entirely composed of dust. Then lastly, we have influence. Now this one tends to be a little bit ignored, at least early in the game, but particularly for the Draken, this increases the amount of influence that your faction gets. And that does a lot of things, actually. A lot more than people realize. It's not just for diplomacy, where, okay, I can come up here, I can talk to somebody, and each one of my diplomatic factions costs influence. So to this empire, if I want to take the diplomatic action of declaration of war, even that costs influence. So influence is a resource that allows me to interact with other empires in the game. But it does more than that. If I want to assimilate a minor faction, that costs influence. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that are tied to influence that people don't see at first, but can be a major factor as the game expands. Okay. Now, with the main city myself, this is your standard hexagonal pattern. It's a hexagon with 6 adjoining spaces. And this is how these cities will build and grow over time. Now, there is a system where as you grow, it will create discontent unless you can get a district up to level 2. So they start out as level 1. Each level 1 gets a negative -15 in approval. And so because if you get that negative approval rating, that is going to degrade the people's attitude with each additional district that you build. But if you build 4 districts to one adjoining one, this central one will become a level 2 district. And a level 2 district actually gets a positive approval rating. It goes up like +10. So what this does overall is that it kind of forces the player to be a little more disciplined in the placing of their districts. You have to keep in mind, okay, which ones I can get up to level 2, and you're going to find your city growing along certain patterns, basically, rather than just spreading out willy-nilly. You have to be a little more forward-thinking in how you're going to place your city. So, like in this case here, if I want to reach towards the ocean and start doing naval units, okay, I have to start building districts out here, but then I also have to make sure there's enough room where I can build adjacent districts to get these up to level 2, for example. Yep. So going along the top here, again, you've already seen some of these screens. This is your main empire screen. This is your faction. Empire plans, also needed with influence. So if I do a simulation here, based on the amount of influence that I have, I can get certain bonuses for my empire. So if I'm willing to spend the influence points, assuming that I have those points when the plan comes up for renewal, I can get an extra 20% science bonus on my cities. Now that's nice. Or I get a 20% cost reduction on building my military units. Or I get +3 dust per population on my cities if I go into the economic sector. Or if I go to Empire and Expansion, I can get +2 vision on my units. They can see out farther as they explore. Yeah. So this type of empire plan along the 4 axes, which is military, science and industry, empire and expansion, and economy and population, really kind of allows the player to steer the development of their faction. So if you have a faction that is more military, say necrophages, the Broken Lords, or something along that line, you can either A, really bump up their advantages and make them even stronger along that particular vector, or you can try and make up for deficiency for that faction. So, for example, in the case of the Broken Lords, they can only grow their population with dust. They don't even use food. Well, if I want to grow the population even faster, I'm going to need more dust. So instead of bumping up my military, I need to bump up my dust production, for example. So there's a lot of different ways you can play with this. All right. Lastly, and there's a lot here, I'm not going to go through everything, but the status screen is here, and this gives you an idea of the overall score of the game. Now, this is a brand new game. It's just me and the Volters. As you discover other factions, their lines will be put on this graph. It's okay. So who has more powerful military? Right now is the Volters. Who has the better expansion? Volters. So on and so forth. Food, actually I'm ahead in food. Industry, we're about tied. Overall score. This comes into the amount of points you get. So if you are running a normal speed game and you turn on the points victory, what that means is that when you get to the 300th turn and none of the other winning conditions have been met, the game will take an overall score, and whoever has the highest score at that point in the game is declared the winner. That's a score victory. Yep. Next up, we have the city screen. Not a whole lot here to show, but once you start expanding your territory, you're going to add more and more cities here. You can get a quick overall glance of your entire empire and see what each city is doing what. And this is actually a fairly helpful tool. Now, it's hard to demonstrate here because I don't have a whole lot, but you can see what your population is, what the approval is, what their minor faction is, what their population distribution is, and what it's generating, which is important. The overall resources. If you have an automated governor or an AI system, you can change its behavior if you want an even balance across all the resources, you can do that. Or if you want to concentrate on production, you can do that. If you want to concentrate on science, you can do that. And you can do it all from this screen. And you can change its build queue. So here, I'm building an altar of Auriga in my main city. Okay, after that, I want to build a Seeker, for example. Well, I can do that from this screen. I don't have to go to the main screen, hunt down the city, look for the build queue, put it here. This allows for quicker empire management. Yeah. Early game, you're not going to be using this a whole lot, but late game, you could be on the screen quite a few times because it does really help. Next up, we have the research screen. The research is split across 6 eras. And as you research more and more in this era, depending which sector you research in, you'll acquire technologies. And when you acquire enough, you'll go to the next era. And how close you are going into the next era? Well, you can look over here at this wheel and the number of notches that come in. When this wheel completes, you will go from, in this case, era 1 into era 2, and you'll get these more advanced technologies. And it goes on, so on and so forth. Yeah. Over here on the left, these are unique accomplishments or buildings that are available in that particular era. So if an accomplishment is made by, say, someone becomes the first to activate 4 luxury boosters, well, then they get a reward of, looks to be die, given to that particular faction. Yeah. And they get a title, I think, called Wealth Harvester, basically. Other ones are unique buildings. such as here, the Museum of Orga. They can build a special building which gives special benefits that only one faction can do. So once that building is built, it no longer becomes available to any other faction. If other factions were building that building at that time, the costs of that building is refunded back to that faction. Okay. Next up, we have the quest system. So now here, I've not talked about this one so much, but this really has a lot of RPG type of storytelling embedded in the game. So each faction actually has their own unique quest line. Yeah, and going through this quest line gives a lot of benefits for that faction. It can either A, provide new commanders, new heroes for your faction. It can give you unique technologies. And towards the end, it can actually offset or eliminate certain restrictions that your faction is having to deal with. Yeah. So it's very beneficial to go through your faction storyline and try and complete it. Because once it's complete, you get a lot of benefits from doing so. You don't have to. You can play this like a normal turn-based strategy game, but it's definitely encouraged if you can at least partially complete your storyline, if not fully. Plus, you'll have a lot more minor storylines that are going to come up here, and you'll have a list that's going to go across. Yeah, and if you complete these smaller sub-storylines that are given to you by various factions or just by events in the game, you can get certain rewards. Next up, we have the hero screen. This is your main units, your main commanders, and you always start out a game with one hero. In this case, is this particular guy right here. And with the hero, you can give them specialized equipment. They have special skill trees, which you can build them out with. Once they gain experience, they gain another skill point. And you can go along certain lines to customize your hero and strengthen them whichever direction you want to do. Now, right now, this hero is assigned as a scouting party, but you can also assign them to be a governor of a city. And once you put them in the governor of a city, then certain bonuses, particularly in the faction line here, come into play. So once they're a governor, they can come in and they can, for example, in this case, reduce the pearl cost in building unique buildings that require pearls, for example. And so, yeah, because this is a Lai faction, a lot of their bonuses are towards pearls. Now, this particular hero may be more of a exploration unit, so there's not that many here. But with other heroes, they're more aligned to being governors, and they bring a lot of bonuses to that particular city. Next up, we have the military. This displays all your deployed units, plus your unit designs. Now here I have 3. There'll be a 4th one once it's researched in level 2 technologies. But you can go in here into your units, and you can customize them with more equipment. So for example, I want to give this guy more armor. I can create now a much stronger unit. But by doing so, I now raise the cost of the industry to make it, so the overall cost to build this unit now has gone up higher. I hit apply, and now I have a new Seeker type unit called Seeker 2. Yeah. Now you can add even more unit designs once you incorporate minor factions. So if I went in here and I incorporate the boss faction, then this unit, the Centaur Cavalry, will become available in my unit designs, and I can create that unit. So depending which minor faction you incorporate into your empire, you get that particular unit. Now you have to look at what benefits does that particular unit provide. And in many times, the way I like to play is I like to bring in a minor faction that prevents an additional capability to my units that I don't natively get with my factional units. Yeah, so with the Ardent Mages, for example, they have a flying unit, they have a ranged unit, they have an infantry unit, but they didn't have any healing unit. Yeah, so I brought in an Eyeless One's minor faction, which do have healers, and I was able to incorporate those units into my main armies, and therefore now I have the advantages of the Ardent Mages with their main units, plus a healing capability now, which keeps those units alive for longer. Yeah. Next up, we have the diplomacy screen. Again, here's all your main factions. I only have one right now, which I've met, but here I can declare war, I can close borders, compliment or warning. Now, what these do here is if I compliment them, it will reduce for a couple of turns any additional requests towards that faction. Yeah. So if I really want to get into a better relationship with them and I want to, say, go and have a peace treaty with them or even form an alliance, if I compliment them, then the influence costs of those requests, which can be pretty high, goes down. And I think it also raises kind of their attitude towards you and raises their points with the relationship with your faction, so that when you do ask for peace or even alliance later on, they're more susceptible to doing that, or what they're going to request for you to have a peace or an alliance will go down. Yeah. On the opposite side, you can have a warning. Now, warning will give a negative score to them, but what it will do is that it will reduce the cost of a declaration of war. So if you're planning to go to war with a particular faction, you can give them a warning first, which will reduce the influence cost with declaration of war, which will happen in the next turn or two. This is also usually tell from the AI that if you receive a warning from that faction, there's a good chance they're going to go to war with you. Yep. Now the next screen, which I can't show here, is the marketplace. But overall here, this is where you can purchase strategic resources, luxury resources, additional units, and also new heroes as they become available. And there are 2 technologies that you need to unlock this. So we'll go back here. The first technology is the mercenary market, which will unlock the heroes and unit section of the marketplace. And the second one is this one, the imperial coinage. This will unlock the resources and luxury resources portion of the market. So if you're planning to use the market, you will need these 2 technologies if you want to unlock the full market. Yep. Last but not least, we have the espionage here, and right now I'm not doing espionage. This particular button came again with the Shadows expansion, and this allows you to recruit spies, which you do by recruiting a hero, and then a hero can be assigned as a spy and infiltrate an enemy city once you have vision on that city. Once a hero unit has infiltrated that city, it will, over time, accrue points within that city, assuming it hasn't been detected, where it can decrease science production, it can decrease morale, it can damage the fortifications, it can actually reduce population, it can target the governor. But each one of these actions presents a risk of the spy either getting captured or being injured. Yeah. So it's a risk each time you do one of these actions. Yeah. So that's the overall game here, at least in the early portion. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the game and what it does and what it is. There's a lot to love here with Endless Legend. As I mentioned, there's a lot of meat on the bone with unique factions, unique technologies, unique ways of playing the game, and how you approach the game. For the consumer, this is what I recommend. If you are a turn-based strategy game player like myself, that you love turn-based strategy game, you need to have Endless Legend in your library. It's not expensive, you can find it on sale, and all the DLC are good. So if you can find a good bundle during a Steam sale, absolutely pick it up. If you haven't played too many 4X strategy games, I would still recommend Endless Legend, even for the newer turn-based strategy game player. There's a lot of depth, but there's also a lot of unique gameplay and a lot of personality to the game that can really hold a lot of new players in and keep them interested in the game. The lore is also very interesting. So, Endless Legend, would I recommend it? Absolutely. This is a great game, and if you have a chance to pick it up, even when it's not on sale, I would absolutely pick it up. And if you do see it on sale, grab all the DLC. All the DLC are good, and this will make a fine addition to your library. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening today. I hope I gave a good presentation here on Endless Legend and what it offers. And stay tuned for additional retro reviews. Thank you everyone. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.